Welcome to the final episode of Series 50, and also apparently our 200th episode somehow.
Something like that, yeah, with bonus episodes, yeah.
Love those round numbers. We had a fantastic discussion for this one. It was a great time. It was, we thought it would be a short recording, and it was not. Shocking, I know. But first, you have to suffer through this cold open. But we can't wait for you to hear what we have in store. So let's go. Let's do it. Announcements.
All right. First up, we are excited to announce that we will not be taking a 2-week break at the end of this month as we normally would. I know, yay, more work. But instead, we are going to be releasing some answers to a bunch of your questions. Will it be 2 episodes? Absolutely. Sure. Will it be more than 2 episodes? Probably. So stay tuned for those. We had a lot of fun recording this, and we hope you have a lot of fun listening and getting to know us better and hopefully taking away some, we think, good advice along the way.
Honestly, and also like a quick thank you. They were really thoughtful questions. I mean, most of them. And then also Jude submitted some questions, but they were really thoughtful. And I think we had to really put in some work to come up with good answers for some of them. So
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Exciting. We have new merch available.
Hooray!
I'm so excited about this. After 4 long years of waiting, you can now own more than one C3 shirt. And thanks to a bout of very serious insomnia, we have great stuff for you. Yeah. Our newest design is based off Series 41.3, where we created the Sims 4 esports team. Yeah. When we played post-match interview, we thought we were hilarious in that recording. I don't know if our listeners loved it as much as we did. We had like the best time.
It was so much fun.
And so when I got the chance to like start playing around with some potential shirt designs, that's where my brain went. So that's what I made. So that shirt is available in the One Shot TeePublic store now, and you can find a link in our show notes if you would like to rep your Sims 4 esports pride.
Yeah, absolutely. Another announcement is I have a new game out in the world right now. It is a micro RPG that where you play as actual bees that can magically transform into magical guardian bees. But you're on vacation, and you know, vacation from saving the world. Constantly.
Heroes don't take vacations.
It's a nice time to unwind at the beach or wherever you want to go on vacation, and your arch nemesis just cannot stop. So what do you do?
Work-life balance. Come on.
What are you to do? Exactly. So it should be a really fun 2 to 4 hour game where you could create characters in minutes. And I created my own dice resolution system for this. I'm planning to make more games with this dice resolution system, and I'm just calling the whole group of games Powered by the Hive, because it's a dice pool mechanic, where you build a dice pool, and the more dice you have, the more interesting results you can get. So I'm really excited to see what people think about it. I think it's adorable. I really want to play it. And I did the graphics for it, and it shows, but it was a lot of fun.
You can do graphics for things like I made a T-shirt.
You did. You made multiple shirt designs, and eventually we will get around to posting those. But we didn't want to. We wanted the tests to see how the process worked with this one shirt design. Now we know, and now we have a better idea what to do when we start submitting groups of shirt designs. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have more merch coming soon, and hopefully you'll have lots more games.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, check out my itch page, lordneptune.itch.io, or you can go to my Twitter at lordneptune and find my link to my various things there. So a lot of ways to find it, but I love it, and
it sounds adorable.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun making it.
We actually have one new review to read this week.
We do.
After the show. You have to wait. But we would love to be able to keep reading them, because this is going to be 2 episodes in a row, and that is a very exciting, cool feeling. However, we need your help for that. So please consider leaving us a review if you have not yet. Even 5-star ratings help us. You can leave them on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or our Facebook page. If you want other ways to connect with us other than leaving reviews, you can follow us on our many social medias. We are on Instagram at CreationCast, on TikTok at Character CreationCast, or on Twitter at CreationCast. Or you can join our Discord at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah. Also of note, on Spotify, you can rate our podcast as well if you are using the mobile version of Spotify.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You can't review it, but you can leave a 5-star review or a rating.
You can let people know that it's good.
Yeah, exactly. And then the more that people rate it, the ratings will actually start showing up, apparently. So it'd be cool if you could throw 5 stars our way in Spotify if that's the way you listen. So if you are listening to this the day of release, one more big announcement. It is Miracle Monday.
Woo! Miracle Monday.
All day today. Yeah, all day today, the one-shot Twitch stream will be featuring a variety of superhero-themed content, all to help raise money for Trans Lifeline. There will even be an AP featuring us, along with Jeff and John, playing our Marvel superheroes characters that we translated into Sentinels. So you can follow along all day over at twitch.tv/OneShotRPG.
That is it for announcements. Please join us after the episode for our calls to action and a review. And also, I think, outtakes, too.
Yes.
Maybe some. I don't know. I feel like we didn't goof around at all, so.
I literally have to cut out at least an hour and a half of outtakes just so we can't have this be a 4-hour episode.
Okay, well, listen here. It was good stuff.
That's true.
Anyway, enjoy the show. Welcome back to our discussion episode. Last time we finished mostly our session 0 for D&D. This episode, we are going to be discussing the character creation process. We are thrilled to welcome back Dylan and Aram of the Kill Every Monster podcast. Do you both want to reintroduce yourselves for everyone at home? And please tell us a little bit about the characters that you made last time.
Hi. My name's Dylan. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the co-host, co-producer, and general keep-on-railser of the Kill Every Monster podcast. And
the Responsible Adult, I think, is the title you're looking for.
That's still pushing it a little too far.
Order Muppet.
Yeah.
Dylan is the Order Muppet.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I made, honestly, an as yet unnamed, because this is the part I struggle with the most with characters, Orc Cleric Baker, who's really like, and I think this is something we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute, the role in the party is so wildly undefined at this point.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have figured out that. We'll see how this works, if it works.
We'll see how it'll work. It has to.
Sure.
It's D&D.
And I am Aram Vartian. I am the other half of Kill Every Monster. I'm here with my good friend Dylan.
Overstatement.
Care about each other very much and love each other and are super excited to show up on shows together, always tethered at each other's side. And today I am playing Johnny Sex. And Johnny Sex is a elephant. I've decided what kind of elephant, by the way. I've actually thought about this.
There are two.
There are lots of types of elephants.
Pretty sure it's
all
just African
throughout
and
time.
There's African elephants, Asian
lots
elephants.
of different types of elephants.
Heffalumps.
Yeah, there's
really.
Shaggy, right?
Well, mammoth.
Shaggy Big. Yeah, Shaggy Big. So I am shaggy big. So I am a shit, but it's all like super nicely combed. Like it's all kind of in like waves and patterns. Like it's like L'Oreal from head to toe.
Slicked back mammoth.
Amazing.
That's right. A pompadour going on here.
Oh, like an Elvis mammoth.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
perfect.
I'm here for it.
Amazing.
And I play my trunk like a saxophone.
Yeah.
And my nickname is Saxophone. So it's actually Johnny Saxophone Sax.
Please.
Every one of these is a dagger into Dylan's heart. You can just hear it.
You just like see him slowly dying. With
They
each word
call
that comes out
him
of your
Johnny
mouth.
Two Sacks.
Yeah. Like
Well, it's
every
good.
time.
We'll do this recording in 2 sessions, and then Dylan will have some time to recover, and then we start back up. And Aram is like, what if I just start by beating you to death with a frying pan?
Look, every time I get Dylan to sigh directly into the microphone, we get a new patron. It's amazing.
Incredible.
Anyway.
Ryan, you want to tell us a little bit about what you made?
My character's probably the most normal character out of all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like that's the most basic like rules as written D&D.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
have
sure.
a very clear role in the party. I like I get a little tired often. There's a
Tired?
yep. I made a vroom vroom rogue. A vroom vroom, for those not familiar, in the D&D system, which is probably everybody. It's a sentient car, an organic sentient car, to be clear. There is a vroom vroom variant that could have been an awakened actual car. But
we didn't want to
is
get too off track.
That
We
would
wanted to
just be
stick with the
absurd.
like.
we wanted
We
to
have to adjust the
basic.
world to allow for a car to exist. And
Yeah.
then make
Yeah.
it sentient.
No,
Yeah.
having the sapient race of car people, that was much easier to integrate.
Exactly. So my character's name is Kat, Katt, which stands for Night Agents 2000, because the rogue variant that I took was a Night Agent variant from, I forget which supplement we use, but it's in the show notes. And this character, literally moonlights as a super spy because depending on the phase of the moon, they get different abilities and whatnot.
Are any of them not looking like a car? Because that seems like it would be really difficult for a spy.
I think
Alter
everybody
self.
doesn't look like a car except for me. Well, there's probably other vroom vrooms around.
Yeah, but like
I would
spies
hope.
have car, like spy car, but like you
I
would
see what
never
you're saying.
expect the spy to be the car. You would be looking for a spy in a car.
Okay, so
Right?
this is a world where we're used to seeing cars. We
Okay,
should start
I
there.
think,
Well,
I think
we
that's
don't
one of
know.
the next bits.
I think, yeah.
Don't get too
We'll
far
have to
ahead of
work this
yourself,
out.
Aram.
Fair enough. Sorry.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun making this character, and we'll see how it all fits together in a bit. But really, really proud of Kat and her contributions to this group. Amelia, how about your character?
So I picked to play a digigod. So I'm actually a digital construct,
Mhm.
but also a god. But slightly evil and trying not to be evil. So I do have one of the notes for my class or for my race is that you are a humanoid, but you're considered to be a fiend whenever it is detrimental for you.
Yeah.
So
You're not bad. You're just coded that way.
Right, exactly. And then I also am a sorcerer, the blood of the lost sorcerer, named Alexa.
Okay, you might be
So-
bad.
Right, I might be bad.
You were also touched by evil for your background, right?
Yes.
Amazing.
Right. So, but like, I'm trying to do better. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good redemption
At least
archetype.
pretending to try to do better.
Yep.
To be fair, you have started out with some
There were
things were a
setbacks.
little beyond your fault. You weren't responsible for the whole touch by an evil thing, right?
Right,
So,
right.
okay. Yeah, you're working your way back. I gotcha.
Right. Yeah, it's not my fault I started out as a virus,
Right. Also, you can be like uniquely reprogrammed to be good or evil. Like honestly, like when we figure this out, it might not
We're
be that
not-
hard. It might just be
we're
a few
not
lines of
gonna
code
get
and
into
hey, you're
the-
good.
Right.
We're not going to get into the philosophy of if a person can actually be represented by codes, what are the ethics of reprogramming an individual?
Right.
We don't need that. No, we don't need to have that conversation.
There,
I think we're starting to have that conversation.
I mean, we can leave that for the fanfic. It's fine. Well, I think we can dive into what our world had become in the fan fiction portion. So let's go ahead and dive right into a segment we are calling D20 for your thoughts.
D20 for your thoughts?
So in this segment, we like to talk to our guests about their thoughts on the character creation process, how it relates into the system and to other games. But first, the number one cliche question of all RPG podcasts. Please tell us how you got into RPGs in the first place. How did you end up here? How did your life come to this?
I ask myself that every day. In ye olde times, I had a friend who knew some people through a forum, and they were trying to do an online, I think it was a Dark Heresy game. And I got really excited about it. It was my first exposure to any RPGs. I had a bunch of books. I read through all of them, and the game never happened. Just fell apart immediately.
Oh no.
Did not get off the ground.
The real RPG experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I started off with a full understanding of what the hobby was.
Yeah, I was talking about it and never doing it.
So one day, me and this friend were walking around talking to Alex Bohr, who was on Kill Every Monster in the Flump episode, and he was fantastic, even if he betrayed me. We were telling him about this whole thing, about how this game works and all that. And then he comes back to us 2 weeks later. Hey, I found a bunch of friends. We're going to try playing Dungeons and Dragons. I know that's not the game you were looking at, but I don't really get how this works. Do you guys want to help me run this? So we ran our first campaign, all of us kind of by the seat of our pants, just trying to figure it out as we went along as a weird little GM triumvirate. Where mostly...
Interesting.
It worked surprisingly well because I kind of kept the broad thing under control. I ran most of the game, and then Alex was running a lot of combat and NPCs, and our last DM was kind of a rules monkey, running the lookups, taking over where he had to. Just anytime we had to double check a feat text because God, 3.5. What a hellscape for looking stuff up. But yeah, no, that's how we did it. We just ran every session. We went to the monster manual and we're like, what monster do we want to make them fight next week? What level do they have to be? Okay, send them a message. Tell them to level up to level 5 and we'll make them fight this next week. We based every session around just what are we going to make them fight?
Oh, that's wild.
Oh, that's kind of cool though.
It was coherent plot.
3 GMs and
madness.
1 player? Or?
No, it was 3 GMs and 6 players.
Oh, wow.
But like I said, one of us was just looking up rules, making sure that everybody kind of knew what they were doing. One person was running the world and one person was basically running the people within the world.
That seems like a really good way to do a starter game, though.
It is.
To not depend, especially in D&D, to not depend on one DM to know all the rules and do all the things. Because we talked about in our last episodes, this game is really not balanced that way as far as workload.
No.
So what a cool way to just sort of stumble into doing it.
Yeah. Splitting it across things. And that's the other thing is those are the loose slots, right? But obviously we bled between it where if I had to double check something because I was going to make a call based on it or I was going to make a move based on it, I would be looking something up and Alex would step up and start running the game. And, our other friend Matt would be taking care of some other side things, or every once in a while we'd have one player who wants to do another thing and we just have a DM running with them for whatever nonsense little sidebar they wanted to do with just an ear open to the table to make sure nothing important was happening.
Yeah.
So we could pull it all back together. It works.
That's
very
really cool.
well, but it's also any game requires chemistry, right? If you don't like your fellow players, the game sucks. Your DMs all have to be on a common wavelength. Right.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, like, as you're describing it, like, it sounds really cool, but it almost seems like the kind of thing that you have to stumble into, because I think if I tried to build that, it would never work. Like, it would never, you'd have to have just the right people and just the, like, you know, a perfect storm to make it happen.
I think you could do it if you were either one, running from a module, or two, like fully ground up. Like, you and I are going to sit down, we're going to build a world and talk about how we want it to work and how the plot is going to go. But like, that is way more time investment than most DMs honestly put in normally to run it themselves.
Right. Or that any of us have as adults.
Yeah. God. No, we would run 2 sessions a week where one was the actual game and the other one was the 3 of us getting together and planning the game for 3 or 4 days from then.
Oh, amazing.
I just remember in high school, like, playing every Saturday for like 4 or 5 hours. And now, like, we can barely manage every 2 weeks. Like, I just, like, how did I do that?
I don't think I've run a game that wasn't some form of content in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I have not.
Adulthood is garbage.
Yeah. I have played one game in the last year, and it was for content. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, the good old days. When we did things for fun. What about you, Aram? How did you get started?
So my brother and I had a babysitter. I was about 8 or 9. Rafi was about 6 or 7. Lowell was about 12 or 13. It was that, you know, where these old enough to watch you for a couple hours during the day kind of babysitter.
Yeah.
And we were not trouble, but, you know, energetic. And so we needed to be directed. And I think like the 3rd time he came over, he, out of desperation, was like, okay, you know what, let's try this. And he had brought over his D&D stuff. And he's like, I'm going to run you through a little game. You're going to be a wizard. You're going to do this. Let's play this out. And I was just transported and completely engaged in a way that I had not been about anything up until that point, and few things since, frankly. It was a way where I could do everything I wanted to do right away, have, you know, it wasn't like a game, it wasn't like Zork. There were options, it was clearer, you could do whatever you wanted, but it was also like that because it was cool, it was building a world, and it was also, I could act and therefore I could speak. Because that's back when my stuttering was so bad that I really couldn't string 3 words together. I couldn't go to McDonald's with my friends because I couldn't say quarter pounder. When they came out with that numeric system, that was the closest I've ever gotten to believing in God, because I can say number 3, no pickles, but quarter pounder was really hard, right? So I was struggling like just to speak. And then I would start acting and I wouldn't stutter. And I could just go for, you know, minutes on end.
Because you lose that self-consciousness because you aren't you.
Yeah, it's that. And there's also like all this science around like when we speak in unison, also when we sing, we don't stutter. There's just these ways that speech plays in different parts of the brain. And so having that freedom for the first time to just be able to speak and express myself without the hang-ups, without having to stop, without having to, you know, struggle or be afraid of what I was going to stammer over next.
Yeah.
That combination just was transformative.
I have read so much, and even just like in my experience with my kids and doing so, like seeing how much there is for kids and like learning and growth and stuff in role-playing games, that I really, really wish we used them more in schools and like education and things like that, because there's so many benefits that like apparently they've been doing a lot of studies and everything that in therapy with kids for various things too, that it's like doing role play, especially through like D&D or something with rules that are like kind of defined, that it's worked really well for kids in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
And there's also like that rolling the dice, like the instant gratification of like, I did a thing and then it happens. Like, you know, there's just so much there. That
it makes a lot of sense with therapy. And anytime you can reframe an experience and then re-experience it, but in a safer place where you can kind of rewrite
with a little bit more control
yourself. And role playing is a perfect way to do exactly that.
I also think it's a really great tool for empathy. It's one of the few things that we can do that we can very easily like slot ourselves into the position of another person and try and like live that experience in a way that we can't in other games and stories and things like that too. So it's a really good tool for that kind of stuff. But I know even for me personally, getting to like play out things that are traumatic for me in a safer space where I have control over the outcome is huge.
Also, it's explorative. Like I can't tell you how many friends of mine during during lockdown for 2 years, right? They were like, I played a lot of games and it turns out I found out something about myself. I'm going to change my pronouns. Like so many of my friends, like they found time to explore in game. It was like, oh, wait a minute, that means something. And then was able to apply it to the, I think that's amazing.
Like I can play as somebody else. I can explore what it's like to live under these different pronouns as this different person to, like to explore queer romance and, all of those things that I can't do just wherever.
I am going to put a but in this. There's a major caveat.
Yes.
D&D is very useful for exploration. It's very useful for stuff like therapy. The DM is not your therapist. Your group is not your therapist.
No.
For the love of God, if you've got stuff you've got to work through, they're actually like deep-seated, like, do not take that to your table as a replacement for actual therapy.
No.
For the love of God.
And also, this is part of a session 0. And I think I think a thing that Ryan and I talked about in our session 0 episode about, making sure that your group is okay with playing out some of those themes, because there are people that I'll play with that are like, totally, let's explore those things. Let's see what happens. And then there are other people that are like, no, I'm just here to have a good time and play as a car. We're not all here for the same thing always.
A sad car.
A sad
not
car.
Not a traumatized car, just a car.
Just a car, not a traumatized, sad car.
A non-cursing car.
Right.
Might be cursed.
Cursed, but not cursing.
No, they're happy. It's a happy car.
Okay. Yes, definitely the kinds of things that you should talk out with your group and, is not a replacement for therapy. But I do think has a lot of good opportunities. For some of those things too.
Every single time at work, whenever they say we should probably do some team building exercises or whatever, my first thought is, can we role play?
Yeah.
Can we get out some dice and some books and play some characters and play during work for a team building?
It's like, that's interesting. I should think about that because my boss is always looking for like team building things, and there's only like 8 of us.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody should run us through.
I've wanted to suggest that every single time, but like I'm like, there's no way they're going to allow 4 hours out of a day.
You'd be surprised. My brother is like in this super corporate like digital signage thing, and he's been like, okay, let's workshop this. So we've been working out like, how do we go to a corporation and have like a 4-hour thing or like a half-day thing, maybe even a full-day thing, where we use role-playing to help them get together, break out, like how do we do this and then sell it as a corporate package, and the numbers behind it, like as far as professional DMing, you can add a 0 as soon as you make it corporate. So if you're pulling in 30 here, you can charge them 300 and they're lining up to do it. Like people are already doing it on the corporate level.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely a thing that already exists, and you just have to get your people on board, which makes it easier because you can then come and go like, hey, look, these are companies that are actually doing it and talking about the benefits of it. And then you can make the company pay you more money.
You just got to be careful. Like you don't want to go run role playing, exercises for Raytheon, right? But for some people, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what do you two look for in a system as far as character creation goes? Like what sort of pieces need to be there for great characters to happen?
So for me, the major thing I want, and this is going to come back to me attacking 3.5, is transparency. There are a lot of feats in, 3.5 where it's not clear how they interact with like the fiction, how they would come up. And then it turns out that they're part of like a prerequisite chain. So when you want to build a character that can do X, you need to take Y, Z, and like 4 other feats, and you have to build it up right. And when you're pawing through it and you're talking with the group, you can come up with the most brilliant fiction in the world. But if the game lies or misdirects you on how to make that occur mechanically, you're screwed. Like that's it. That's the entire game. Like, so just present the choices that you want the players to be able to make in a game like D&D that is 98% combat. Tell them this is a combat ability. It does this. This is how it works. This is a ability that will not really work in combat, but it's going to be useful in these scenarios. Don't put trap options in there, that kind of stuff. Like, I just want to be able to build the character that I have in my head and know that it works.
And to know that if I pick a choice, it's something that I'll get to use. Because there's nothing worse than like having those options being like, I picked this really cool ability.
Exactly. Like,
it's never going to come up.
Jeff and John talk about it a lot in System Mastery, trap options, where something is explicitly not useful, but they put it in the game for completeness. Where you're just like, why would I ever pick that ability? There's no cause for that. And it's so disappointing when you sit down to a game, like, especially as a player who's never played that game before. And you're like, I built this really cool character and it's going to be really great. And you sit down and it's like nothing on my sheet is useful here. Which is another one of those, like,
it's called making
why
a
you should
ranger.
have a session 0. But I've been there before. Like, you make this really cool character that I've got this great idea and this great concept, and then you sit down and you're useless.
I was having a conversation with someone earlier this week where I built a character in a Pathfinder game where I was the item maker. You know, I had all the item creation feats. And then as you're playing, you start to realize, like, the thing I'm good for is when we're told we got downtime, I'm a discount code. It's cheaper than having someone else make it. But now when we're in combat, I don't have the feats built up to be effective or useful. So, like, you've sort of trapped the character. Like, I can't contribute until we're actually not playing the game. And then my contribution is to make everyone else better at the game. That stopped being fun immediately.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a problem with games like
this. But at the same time, being told, like, you're the guy who can make the sword into a +3 flaming sword, that sounds awesome. It isn't. It's a lie. Right. Yeah, which is a problem of a game like this, where it's like, oh, you can do all these things in downtime. Cool. But, like, none of the game is actually about downtime.
About downtime. And also, if you play D&D the way it's supposed to, quote unquote, to be played, with a grid, with 4 encounters in between every long rest, on that kind of scale where it's just combat, a little bit of text to then introduce you, basically box text to then introduce you to the next combat.
Right.
If you were to play it in that method, then some of the game starts to make more sense, right? Like, okay, well, that's why all this stuff happens. But if you're actually playing a character, if you're role-playing at all, you have to chip away at some of that because there becomes no room. You can't, if you're running 4 combats, you absolutely do not have room to talk to each other or share a campfire, a story. You have to pull away from that. And then once you start pulling away, the math is wrong. So all of D&D, for the way that the majority of people are playing it now, doesn't work for the math that they've set up. For every monster, for every encounter, for every long rest. Like, it just no longer works. So if trying to adhere to that and saying, like, well, I have to do this in order to play D&D, you don't. You just have to understand the numbers just enough to make the numbers work and have consistency, and then you can basically do whatever you want.
Right. Which it comes back to a discussion that we had in previous episodes, is like, what still is D&D?
Right.
You know, like, how much downtime and role playing and all that can you have where it's still D&D?
Yeah, it's the ship of Theseus argument, right? Like, if you, it's nice because the game is modular. Well, how many times can you replace a modular piece before you're really effectively doing something different?
Right. Which, you know, is a thing that I feel like we really are going to have to pick apart here when we look at the fact that we did not really touch the main book very much.
No.
Which, you know, is part of our next question. How do you feel like using supplements for character creation rather than just using the player's handbook kind of stacks up? How did that feel to use, like, all kinds of unofficial stuff versus the real thing?
I like it. I like using different things. Again, it allows you to find this character and hone it in. The only part where it gets a little tricky is in how do you make the world work? Like, if you've got an artificer, If you're the only artificer because you're a genius and you figured it out, fine, that world works. If there are other artificers, now we have to discuss how everything's different and how there's a maglev train and everything. Like you have to like the existence of Ryan's character changes a world in some way, unless it's like a portal opens and vroom vroom drives through. Right? That's the only way to. Otherwise, you have to radically change this world.
You have teleport spells and plane shifts, and if a portal opens and Ryan's character drives out, it changes the game, but later. Because in early levels, sure, we can brush off that and, he's the only one. But now when I hit, 17th level wizard and I teleport to the elemental plane of Vroom Vroom,
Yeah, and then you got to fight the choo-choos.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, the elemental plane of choo-choo is a different one. And if they ever cross,
God help us all.
The Vroom Vroom's main enemy is the choo-choo.
Yeah.
Right.
And so they have to exist in the same realm, right?
There's also there's the land of neutral thwops. Like there's lots of places we can go here.
And this is sort of the thing with looking at supplements is you have to be a little selective. Because sometimes the supplement comes along with a lot of fluff implications. And depending on like Ryan mentioned, the choo-choos are a legitimate thing that in that book exists and are the mortal enemies of the Vroom Vrooms. So if you integrate a Vroom Vroom directly from the book, God, I hate every sentence that's coming out of my mouth. You have immediately implicitly included choo-choos in your world, but you have to have a longer conversation.
I can't wait to pull just this section and put it on TikTok.
Yeah, hear me out though. Hear me out. You've introduced your new Vroom Vroom pal. No one quite understands it, but we've accepted it. We've accepted our new Vroom Vroom pal, and they've told us the stories of the trains. And then one night at your campsite in the distance, you hear a horn. You hear that train wheel, that soft, comforting, mournful sound, but it's a threat and it's getting louder. That would be amazing.
But this is exactly what we're talking about, right? Like you now have to change your world to account for the fact that certain decisions have gotten made. And it's a dangerous thing to do as the DM, because now were I running this game and I came in, honestly, it's the mistake I made. I figured, okay, I can at least provide an anchor character and build something relatively normal, fairly plain. And everyone went wild in orthogonal directions to the point where the character that stands out the most, the character that doesn't work in the party, is an orc cleric.
Right.
Right? You have fundamentally shifted the world in so many different directions.
Yeah.
That were I trying to run this, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, you're the audience in now. If this is a live stream, right? Or if this is a podcast, you're the audience in. You're the connection in all the craziness. You've got to play the straight man or the straight orc.
Sure. But what I'm saying is that if the DM didn't know what we were all going to pick ahead of time, we would now have to break for like a month so that I can fully write a campaign, because I had no idea that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's part of the mistake. We did not make a mistake. I knew exactly what we were doing. But if you were going to run a game where you allow players to use supplements to pick character types, you need to say, within these confines, from these one or two books, from, of this class type or whatever. Or
even just this is the story I'm looking to tell. Like, you can pick whatever from any book.
Find something that fits. Yeah.
But it has to be able to which also creates one of the more unfortunate power dynamics in a game where you look at something and you're like, that doesn't fit the story I'm trying to tell. Can you go back to the drawing board? I had an entire it nearly turned into an argument with a player where I was trying to run what I told up front was going to be a standard issue sword and board, very regular fantasy. This was shortly after 5th edition came out, and the class that he latched onto was the Great Old One Warlock.
Right.
Which means now implicitly my world has to include Cthulhu.
Right.
Basically. And I'm left going because I know this is a sort of player who's going to want to integrate the patron into their story, which means that now that has to feature heavily, which means whatever I was running has to be compatible, It's that sort of problem.
Yeah.
And then trying to tell it, actually, we brought this up in the last episode, trying to tell a player, sorry, the thing the core book said you were allowed to do, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You're never winning that fight.
Right.
No.
Also, like with Ryan, you've got the whole centaur issue. Like, we can't go in a dungeon now.
Yeah, stairs.
Because we got Ryan.
Exactly. Right? I take up the whole hallway.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm basically the slightly shorter, gelatinous cube.
Yeah.
And I can't go around corners unless
You all
I'm
meet in a
drifting.
tavern, except for the vroom vroom who is outside next to the horses because the door
You
is
all
4 feet
Headlights
wide.
through the window.
You all meet at a drive-through.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Because, centaurs aren't just player's handbook by itself. You can't just pull out a centaur as a player character. But I've seen it work in APs and whatnot. And the thing about it is it's so ingrained in us that we are playing humanoids that unless it's mentioned, you forget about it.
Yeah.
And I'd be willing to bet 90% of the players that are playing centaurs are playing them like humanoids.
Like
they're walking up and down stairs. They're climbing ropes and other shit. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff you can
They're climbing ropes and other things. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot that you can sort of hand wave and not acknowledge, but the more blatant it gets, right?
You can't have a centaur climb a rope.
You can imagine a centaur climbing a flight of stairs and maybe it's a winding staircase and there's a certain point where if you think about it hard enough, you're like, could you pivot? This is the sort of staircase I couldn't get a couch up.
Right.
And your butt is 6 feet away from your face.
Well, first of all, in a world of centaurs, there'd be a lot more ramps. Right?
Yeah, sure.
There'd be a lot more ramps.
Yeah.
So maybe, but still.
Maybe we can just go ahead and assume that the world of D&D is slightly more accessible.
Yeah.
For some
And
people.
there's magic. Why not?
But that's the thing. It's
But they
you
still
get
can't
into,
climb a rope.
Yes. But you get into those questions and you start there's a certain point where you've picked deep enough and either we need to alter the world or just accept that just shut up for a bit.
Right.
But if you go too far away, like I said, the case of the vroom vroom,
right.
where you're like, oh, no, I can imagine if the corner's too tight, horses are still you could bend a little bit, you could fit. So you're made of an organic metal, I guess? Can you
does
turn?
from bend? Yeah. Can you bend at the waist?
You have wheels. What if it's really muddy?
I mean, I
Can
do
you
have
get
facial
stuck?
expressions on my grill, so.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, wait. No, so I'm picturing, the Disney characters from Cars. That's what I'm picturing when I think of you. That's what
he's
you
playing-
are, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
lightning McQueen.
Effectively,
Right.
except for my eyes are the headlights and not the windshield.
Right, which is frankly correct and the right way to do it, Disney.
And my eyes can light up like headlights, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can you see in fog?
It's this whole we've got all these supplements that we just kind of mashed together. We're just well, let's see what happens. And I personally loved it. And I love wacky, this is not a serious campaign.
No.
No matter how
I love
straight
this for what it is. But
no
it's
matter
not,
how straight and serious the story is, it's not serious when you think about it even a little bit.
Right.
And this is another
But
thing.
that's how you play your
tends to
character. That's how you play your character, Dylan. You play it super serious among us. That's how it works.
But this is a thing that doesn't get talked about that much that is important. This isn't a game that I enjoy. There's a certain point where you've taken it so balls to the wall ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know.
That
I
it's
would never
just
play
so-
this game.
Exactly,
I would not have any fun with this.
No,
Absolutely.
And Aram and I are over here yes, more.
I'm super psyched for the one shot. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing
maybe,
wrong with enjoying it. I'm just saying there's a certain point where if those expectations aren't properly calibrated and we were planning on running this game, it becomes a very, very awkward situation where I get to this point and I'm like, do I just kind of power my way through it? But there's going to be a certain point where I'm just not having fun and I will probably drag the game back. Or do I have to somehow find a way to tell my friends hey, listen, love you guys. You're wonderful.
I hope you have fun,
but
but this isn't for me.
Home. I'm just not doing this one.
I mean, honestly,
I feel that way a lot of times about D&D, though, when friends tell me about their D&D, because I don't like wacky games. I don't,
Not
that's
really,
not,
no.
my play style is not wacky and weird and crazy. It's like somebody was telling me about their game where they're their character is in a baby Bjorn being carried around by a giant skeleton or something. And I'm like, that doesn't sound fun to me. That just sounds that doesn't...
Yeah,
That sounds dumb.
It's too far.
It's too much. It's too much.
I mean,
That being said-
it's an interesting concept walking around, right? But then you go into town and you're like, no, carry me into the inn. I'm like, no, see, people don't like this. Like, I see you want to do this, but you have to accept that there's a reality and that people are going to react differently than you. You can't just walk onto a set every time you want and expect the world just to be a set. Like, if we're going to buy in, you've got to buy in. If you can figure out a way to make this wacky thing actually work in this world, great, do the extra work, but don't just dump it on us and expect us to buy into your bad premise.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's sort of what I'm trying to get at is like, if you can't set those baselines, then you wind up with a nonsense premise.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I just want to bring up real quick. We accidentally made a garbage D&D game that I have no interest in playing.
Right.
We can restructure Ryan's character slightly, and this is a Shadowrun game that I would play.
Right.
Because the thing we accidentally built was a beefy caster, a face, a hacker, and the wheelman.
Yeah.
Like, you make it the sort of thing where you can just do like a mental connection to the car, or you jack into it or whatever, and it's effectively the same sort of concept.
Right.
Like, and this is, again, one of the walls you hit up against.
So it's definitely like in how you skin it and like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then the question is it D&D?
What your world is, and that's the problem.
No, it's now
right?
Shadowrun.
Exactly.
Right.
No, it's not Shadowrun.
It's a garbage D&D game because it doesn't make sense, and you have to jump through all these hoops.
It's
and by the
cyberpunk
time
D&D,
you've put it
obviously.
into the right brackets, the right setting to make it work, you've stopped playing D&D, and you need to change the system because D&D doesn't account for the things we're going to want to do in a game
Right.
that has these characters in it.
Yeah.
Also, Shadowrun gives you some leeway. We were talking with Carlos, and the quote came up like, the average person will only ask why twice. If you give them a scenario, they'll only ask why twice. If the first thing is it's Shadowrun, there might not be a second question. Like, that's going to cover most of it.
That rule expects reasonable answers to each ask. Like, what's
Right.
Ryan playing? Oh, he's
A
playing
car.
a sapient car. Wait, so did somebody invent cars? No, cars are just creatures. Wait, so there's like a city then? Like, do they come out of eggs? Like, no, there's a factory. Hold on, so are these constructs?
Right.
Like,
But if
you're
your first
actually
answer had been, wait,
invoking-
it's Shadowrun, you would have gone, oh,
like,
okay.
no, sorry, he's not playing a sapient car.
How
he's
many dice
playing
does he
like
roll?
he's not playing a sapient car. He's playing a hacker
organic
who is
car.
jacked into a car and just controlling it from a post. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
yeah, that's
Oh.
Shadowrun.
Yeah, that's Shadowrun.
That's
That's
Shadowrun.
totally
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Oh,
You're just playing basic Shadowrun.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that in our Shadowrun episodes, didn't Mike McDowell just make Jesus?
Yep.
Yeah.
that checks out.
So-
Literal Jesus.
Literal
not like
Jesus.
somebody
Yeah.
that was pretending that they.
Yeah,
it was
no,
wild.
he made Jesus. Yeah.
That
yeah.
sounds right. Yeah.
So,
that sounds very on brand.
yeah. And then there was a teacup pig. Somebody made a teacup pig.
Amazing.
Flying teacher.
So yeah, I mean, I think the answer, like, oh, it's Shadowrun, just totally.
Short
I have
circuits a lot of
so
stuff.
many fewer
Like 90%
questions
covered. Yeah.
about the things that we did if you had said we did this in Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Because all of the things that we made would have been in the core book.
Yeah.
I agree. I think so much of whether you do or don't use supplements, what parts of supplements you use, how you use them, all of that kind of stuff really has to be a conversation that happens ahead of time. And it feels like so much work of a D&D game needs to be front loaded for it to work at all.
It's got to be judicious choices.
Yeah.
Supplements are amazing and they expand what the game can do. But if you expand in too many directions at once, it's nonsense.
And there's so much cool stuff out there that people have made that I want to be able to touch. But like,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was going into this thinking we might throw out this this next question because it's like we talked about D&D, we talked about how the process of character creation reinforces the feel of playing
it
D&D
makes
before.
it very combat heavy, I think was the answer
But-
we came to last time.
Right, but in this scenario, I have a very good idea of how this particular group of people would play, and it would be wacky.
Right. Yeah, we have definitely set a tone, if nothing else.
Oh, absolutely.
So that being said, we set a tone that is nearly incompatible with the game itself.
Yes.
Right.
Like D&D is a combat simulator. Wackiness comes in through description and through fluff. Like we've done something, and Amelia, I think you brought this up in the last episode. Like there's a certain, or possibly the first episode, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But there's a certain point where like if you're doing it entirely outside of the rules of the game, are you playing the right game for what you're trying to do?
Right. Yeah, which is has always been my big thing with people who are like, oh, just reskin it in 5e. And it's like, but there's probably a game that does it better. You know, like it doesn't, the mechanics that you're using should reinforce the feel of what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
The mechanics should help tell the story. They shouldn't be just like a thing that you do and then also we tell a story, which is what seems to happen in a lot of games where people are like, I love D&D, we're telling this great story. And it's like, no, you're rolling dice and doing combats and also writing some fan fiction. Like you're not doing both.
So we are telling a really good story in between the 3-hour slog it takes to do every room of combat. We're telling a fun little story in the hallway.
Right. No, I think that we have set an expectation for what the tone of this game is going to be. Honestly, I think Ryan was really the one that set that expectation because I think when I look at my character, like, yes, I picked this like digital god and I picked, you know, this like sorcerer or whatever, but none of those choices were overly like wacky. Yeah, they are distinct and, you know, not necessarily like base D&D.
It sets a tech level, but it doesn't change the tone much.
Right. Yeah. And most of the decisions I made were like toward the darker, more evil kind of thing, which is what I do. Ryan's character is the one that like flat out was like, I'm a car. And it was honestly, like, well, here we are, I guess.
If there wasn't a car, it would have been a magical girl, and then we would have been much closer in tone.
And that would have actually become a lot more interesting because then what you have is a bunch of different varieties of chosen one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And you create something a little bit like streamlined in the narrative, you know?
Yeah.
That would have been an interesting, like, council of chosen ones kind of like.
Yeah, you've got the magical girl, you've got the like weird digital consciousness from the distant future, you've got the one that was just chosen by a regular god in a fantasy world, and the sax guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
someone always has to wander in.
But that's the thing is you have to wander in, but then the story becomes like, if everyone else is a chosen one and somehow you've accidentally wound up in the party, are you? Do we just not realize how or recognize what? And that becomes a really interesting arc.
But as long as we're going to play a full campaign, we got like 6 years to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, the question too then is like, are you maybe a savant of some kind that like that is your
maybe
power?
My god's just subtle. Maybe music is just this far more subtle religion that eventually guides you down a path. And we learn about it in a little different way later on. For a while, I'm just the guy tagging along, probably the comic relief, even though there's a car. And then later on, there's an anchor point. I think it's great. If you give, like, you want to bring your DM every single thing about your backstory, and here's the entire roadmap to, like, you know, pull in all the emotional things. Here it is. Give it to them. Great. DMs love that. But if you're like, here's a bit of a nebulous cloud, feel free to fill that in later. That's a nice gift to hand over, and it'll pay huge dividends.
That's much more how I prefer to play.
Yeah.
Is like, here are a couple hooks. Like, here's some strings you can pull on, some directions I would like to go. Help me figure out what happens.
Yeah.
Don't build an orphan. Don't kill the parents. It's, you know, I built a half elf, and eventually, you know, dad started aging and it became weird and uncomfortable, and mom sort of just left, but she's an elf, so she's definitely still alive somewhere and also still young enough that she is also adventuring.
Right.
Like, I don't know what happened.
Maybe
That's
she has another
now.
elf family out there in Canada. I don't know.
We do have a lot of elves in Canada. It's just a thing.
I've heard that. No, I think it's, I also think that this is an interesting sort of exercise in what happens when one person makes a choice that changes everything. Because I've definitely had that in games too, where it's like we're all roughly on the same page, and then some person does something, whether it's a big or a small character choice. In Ryan's case, it was kind of a big, obvious choice. But sometimes it is somebody taking that one sort of like, you know, I was chosen by my God to do this. And then the whole story becomes about that. Or they change the tone of the whole game. And it's a thing that, you know, sometimes you can account for in a session 0, but sometimes sort of just happens. And I, as a player, I've definitely been in games where I've been frustrated by that, where somebody like makes a decision or is like, I'm going to do a thing. And it's like, okay, now it's the Steve show because like they have sort of hijacked the story.
Yes, Steve.
And it's all about them. And like, we're all just along for this ride.
There's also ways to do that for good, though. Like, I know what you mean. Like there's a way to like put the spotlight on you and like, it's all about me. That's not the way to do it. Like, if you want a story thing, let's say you're like, okay, I want to make sure at this new table, my line in Veil is I don't want slavery in this game. I don't want that at all. And how I'm going to reinforce that is I'm playing an orc. And now, every time we walk into a town, like I said, no lines of ills, no slavery, no racism. So now every time I walk into a town, you've got to treat me equally. So the world has to accommodate that. I now have to think about the fact that this is different from a typical D&D world. And we are actively now engaging with that. It's a nice way to kind of reinforce that. I'm not the center point, but I have, but my character choice has reinforced an element about the world.
Normally, we talk about character sheets for this game, well, for any game that we look at. And one of the things we noticed with D&D when we first looked at it, too, is that, you know, all of these boxes are like, how do you hurt the thing, right? But I want to talk about with what we've made and with all of these various supplements and even just like in general experience for you. Do you think that there are things that should be included on a character sheet that aren't?
Take a look at a standard D&D character sheet and look at how much room there is for the background. I harped on this a little bit in part 1, but like the backgrounds make an attempt at giving you non-combat options on how to interact with sort of social problems. Again, a lot of the core book ones are kind of garbagey in that there's stuff like, oh, you need a place to stay. You're an acolyte. You can stay at the church. Problem solved. We just short-circuited the existence of a problem rather than giving you a way to engage with it. But like the intention is there.
It's the only real like personality bits that you get.
And there is a weird little box that's like 3 lines and does not provide the space to enter this in, which like explicitly tells you how valuable it is. It's the same for feats, despite the fact that, again, mechanically, feats are one of the most interesting ways to interact with the game. You don't have the ability to write them on your character sheet. The game is very much pushing you towards all of those standard buttons of interaction. Here are your skills. Here's the damage of your weapon. Here are your ability score bonuses and your saves. And the sheet is over. Nothing else.
You even have room for how much gold you have, though. So...
You know, it's interesting because I think a lot of problems with D&D, really, if you really want, like a lot of problems with D&D, things that, you know, if you took it, they just changed the name of race. They're like, okay, well, it's not called races anymore. Or they're trying to shift it out. They're now species. It doesn't solve anything because it's still species first, right? That's still the first thing. Change it. The background should be first. Make the background the first thing you pick. Make it the most powerful thing you pick. Put all the dots and all the things in there and just separate that out from species. And if the background becomes the driving factor, then you're like, okay, this is how I was raised. These are the experiences I had, not this is the thing I am.
Yeah, we talked about that with the Ancestry and Culture book that had come out last year, you know, that looks at like, okay, how was I raised? Where was I raised? You know, like these things determine more about me than the fact that I am white or, you know, the fact that I am an elf. What kind of elf? Where was I an elf? Was I raised by elves or was I raised by humans? Like those would tell you a lot more about you and your traits and the things that you've learned than just like elf. Okay, like, I've got pointy ears, so I have more charisma. Like, no, what? And I think that D&D could do a lot more with that.
That is an interesting point, though. If we did the background and personality first and just reversed the process, like that's a huge difference.
It would give
in
you
how
so much more of a
characters
hook for role playing and so much more of an invitation to role play. I think, because that's the thing is like with the backgrounds, they're in there and you can use them for role play, but it's very much tacked on at the end after I've picked all of the other things. I've done all of the character building.
Yeah.
It feels
and
very
then we
much.
role play. Like
it's the difference between saying like, I am an elf. How would an elf be this? And saying that this is who I am. How does that change now slightly being an elf? How does being an elf now flavor who I am? What does that add to who I am? Not how does that define who I am?
It's part of what I like about sort of more point by systems where like instead of having levels and character progression, you just sort of buy into your abilities individually.
Yeah.
Because like the moment you say, oh, I'm an elven mage, well, everybody knows what that is. Everybody knows what 1 to 20 is. And like you have to start coming up with the ways that you're twisting that to make that unique and your own. But if I were to say like, no, my character is that I'm a baker and I worked like I was part of a little military camp. So I went through basic, I can fight, but then I was chosen by a god to go out on this higher purpose. I could have all of the exact same abilities, but the fact that I couldn't just say half-orc cleric.
Yeah. And that's a million times more interesting starting with, I was a baker.
And gives you so much more to work with. And again, like for all of those people that, you know, talk about all the really great role-playing opportunities you had in your D&D game, that's what you're playing with. And so for all of those people that want a role-play heavy game, like it brings that to the front and says, okay, like now how does this affect my story rather than like, I have swords and also a family, I guess.
Yeah. And honestly, if you put the background first and you want it to be, it's still super important, quote unquote, for the people that are just there for the stats, and just there for the combat abilities and stuff, throw that into the background as well. Like, oh, you were a fisherman. So that means that you've got, you know, extra dexterity and extra, you know, this because of, you know, your ability to work on boats and blah, 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 you know.
Yeah. Or even just like, pick your background first. Okay, now pick your ability scores. Same rules as normal. You get a +2 and a +1. Tell me why those are different because of what you did. If you make, you know, oh, I worked in construction, so I have a +2 strength because I'm used to, you know, having to lug bricks around and like swinging a hammer, all that fun stuff. And my secondary stat is intelligence because I was the one who was in charge of just keeping track of equipment and making sure everything was in order. You know?
Yeah. Tell me why you have those, like, not just like, oh, I get +1 this because I'm a human. Like, great. I have flat feet.
It's a major improvement, don't get me wrong, that D&D has dissociated those bonuses from race, at least. It's no longer a
100%.
biological thing, but now they are devoid of meaning. They're a way to just pad your stats and skew it towards what you wanted to build.
Now it's like, we don't really know what else to do with them, and we do need a +1 somewhere, otherwise the math doesn't work. So here, I guess.
No, you don't. Just factor them into the standard array.
Yep.
No, we can't change this. What are you talking about? We can't change this.
Just move the numbers up a little bit. Add a couple more points on point buy. Problem solved.
Can't do that. We can't.
What are you talking about?
Also, stop putting in scores from 3 to 18. They're useless. Give it to me on a scale of -5 to 5.
There is
the bonus keep going up if you got it.
More like infuriating than I leveled up. I get a +1 to my stat. Hooray!
It does nothing.
Literally nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely.
Until
worthless.
I level up 4 more times and I get another +1 to that stat.
Ooh, this has come up like 3 times in different spaces. D&D
No one
needs
likes
to
it.
bring back healing surges because that's what they did with hit dice, and then they forgot that that's what they did with hit dice. Like having that be like, oh no, you have a healing resource that you can spend. So now I'm level 8, I have 8 hit dice, and this potion doesn't cause me to magically heal. It accelerates my natural healing so that on the battlefield I chug this and I regain, but it takes away and now I don't get to rest as much or any of that stuff. Those are great. And now it's a resource that can be managed and can be worked with. And that's how you make blood magic really work in D&D, is if now instead of my hit points, my healing is the thing you're spending out of. That can be way more interesting. That's really
I feel like
cool.
that's a big problem with a lot of things in D&D, though. They're like, we changed this so you could do this, but we forgot that we did it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're like, oh, we'll change things over here. And then nobody bothered to, like, connect the dots and remember that it also is going to affect this thing over here.
It's so complex at this point. It's just bound to happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care how many people they add on it. I don't care how well they have it mapped out. Like, it's too complex. They're going. Also, there's a power creep that's been happening consistently, and that throws everything out of balance.
Yep.
It's just I don't think it's possible
Yeah.
with something this complex to keep it
Yeah,
perfectly.
not unless you, again, like, would just start with a new edition. You'd have to, which is, I assume why they keep making new editions.
I mean, at least it's not
You
Rift.
say that, but it's harder now. Because it's so complex, it's harder for them. If they were to switch it over to 60 now, with everything with D&D Beyond, with Roll20, with everything that they are tied to, have contracts with, it's going to be a lot harder. I think they're going to. I think it'll be a slow rollout to 5.5, and then maybe 2040 we'd see. No, I'm sorry, maybe 2030 we'd see a 60, but I think it's like that far down.
No, I think that's fair. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do we think is one of the biggest flaws of character creation using all of these supplements? I'm pretty sure I know the answer from Dylan, at least. And what is one of the best parts?
You do this because I'm too obvious.
Okay, so the fun part is, the good part is that by doing these long involved character builds and really kind of like exploring, like, what does this mean? How does this affect the world? We have done a lot of the world building at the table already. We've built several different worlds, in fact, for this group to work with. And that is a really fun character exercise that helps figure out how we're going to play the game, and helps us figure out how we're going to react to each other and how we're going to play our own characters. The problem is it takes forever. It takes forever. And if you don't have all the booklets, then it's harder for you and me, and it's expensive as hell. There are a lot of problems with the D&D system, but it's basically time and money are going to be the two big ones for me.
Yeah.
I think specifically with the supplements, and Ryan, let me know if you called this one. Biggest flaw is that Aram is right. There's a lot of fun. We sat down and hold on, because sometimes he says something.
Aram being right, or is the flaw the thing that?
We're gonna get to it. Aram is right. It was a lot of fun to sit down and do all these world building exercises, but that asymmetric system that we talked about means that we sat down and we had a lot of fun as players talking through different ways we could make this world work, different vague sort of senses of the world in which this party could exist. And now player 5, who obviously in this podcast doesn't exist, has to go home, take all those suggestions, synthesize a coherent world in which a plot still happens. Because this is the thing. When we switched it to everyone is a chosen one and Ryan played a magical girl, we immediately had a narrative plot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
The party implied a story. Just trying to make all of these characters exist in the same place is arduous. Trying to then tell a story that occurs using all of them now that they're all here, borderline impossible.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's a lot of fun to do, and having all of these options and doing the character building exercise is great, but it sucks so much for the DM to then have to go and make something of it, especially given that, again, the way D&D lays out its workload, it is one person who now has to turn this into a story instead of a pile of kind of funny stuff we said.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those few times where we're coming away from this show and I'm like, I'm glad I don't have to play this game. Like, I'm glad that this isn't a thing that I have to do. Normally we walk away and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do something with these characters. That would be really fun. And this one I'm like,
burn them all.
Nope.
Yeah.
Burn it to the ground. Like, it was fun for what it was, but you're right. Like, I can't see a game where this works coherently and is fun for everybody, and everybody gets like equal screen time too. Because I just really feel, Ryan, love you though I do, you have driven this off the rails. with that one choice is that like no matter what the rest of us do, everything is a slave to that one decision that you have made.
And to be fair, that was exactly my intent going into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you knew what you were doing, and that's fine.
Like I intended
because we knew that there wouldn't be consequences.
Yeah.
We don't have to deal with that.
Exactly.
If you had played a giant or a troll, this would have been less intrusive than playing a living car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was kind of my whole point is like, if you are the player that takes that really out there supplement and picks the most like unorthodox character from it, you're gonna have this sort of experience.
Yeah.
And I wanted to showcase that.
Here's a question though:
is that it's going to resent you?
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
That
Yes,
book
they all
had
buy
like
in. They're going to resent you. Yeah.
200 some choices, right? Like that book had a ton of stuff in there. Right.
Yeah.
If we had all gone equally out there, because it had things that were like, you know, butts for faces and stuff.
Yeah.
Like if we had all chosen to do something like that non-D&D, like would it have helped?
No. Because I think
Then we're just Toonville.
Certain cases where I think you're close enough to normal, like say the centaur case, where you can just tell people like, okay, yeah, the centaur's got to go upstairs sometimes. It doesn't really make sense. The wizard's casting fireball. Leave me alone.
Right.
However, replace that sentence. Yeah, it's really hard for the car to drive up a stairwell, but also Aram's character literally has a butt for a face and communicates through farts.
Right.
And you haven't actually made it better. You just made everything like, you know what? Actually, you're right. Let's talk about why that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I also want you to know, Dylan, by assigning the butt face character to me, you have invoked that in the future. There will be a time when I role play that now, and I want you to know it's going to cycle back to here.
You did it to yourself.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, as long as you don't do it in a place where I have to deal with it, I don't give a damn.
I just know that like the book also had like tree people,
Is that too
and
far?
you know, so
Do I
like
get
does it
that
become
one
like
square?
you can have that one. I'll allow it.
Yep.
You know, like you know, if we all started to be like similarly sized, or you know, like at what level is it like so weird that it just doesn't matter anymore, or is there not a point?
I think we'd all have to be cars. Like
Oh,
for this one particular one to work, I think we'd all have to be cars. Yeah, I think we'd all have to kind of be in car world, and then it's just car world. It's
okay, fine, but I'm a plane.
That's fine. That's fine too.
Coherent.
You be a
car
train.
World.
But does it even matter at that point? Once we've just replaced everyone and now we're all cars and boats and trains, does it even matter? Or have we just basically rewritten the world except everyone's cars and boats and trains, but it all works the same?
But now it's normal because we're all that thing.
Now it's not now it's
so
not
I'm
weird.
just like wondering
exactly.
like how, like if what level is it of like this is okay, this is okay, this is weird.
Right.
This is okay again.
I'm going to talk in math terms.
Okay.
God.
It's about it's a vector space. It's about direction, right? You can make it as weird as you want in one direction, right?
Yes.
We are all cars and we're all moving on the same path, and it is so far away from the baseline, but everything is related to each other.
Right.
The moment someone moves orthogonal to that, you're moving at a 90-degree path on weird. Like, say, one person builds a car that is supposed to be able to exist in a fantasy world, and another person has decided also this fantasy world not only has computers, but has sapient computers that are sapient computer viruses that are also wizards. And one guy is like, also, it's an elephant.
This elephant can play the saxophone.
And you're just like, hold on, but now you have to reconcile all these things.
And then Dylan's over here like, also, I bake bread.
Also, honestly, I'm kind of the worst of it because, like I said, these are all weird in orthogonal directions, but I'm anchoring us to that 0 point of no displacement from normal.
Yeah.
I'm forcing a comparison to what things, air quotes, should be.
Right.
Right.
And now your character is going to toss me like baked alcoholic goods so I can eat them through my grill.
Yeah, everything is terrible. Right.
Right.
So like you can go as weird as you want as long as everybody stays close to the same
of weird.
Exactly.
Okay.
The more you go in different directions, the more you have to make all of these things true at the same time. And once they're all true at the same time, they have to be able to be. right?
Right. No, I fully agree with that. I just think that's like an interesting like sort of thought exercise to have of like where do these weird things fit in, because they can be, you know, like because we could all play, you know, the world of Cars if we wanted to, which we definitely don't, you know, and it's offshoot planes, but this isn't what we were doing. You know, like we weren't all being Cars.
When we came in for D&D,
even though World of Cars sounds like a lot of fun and we all would have fun playing it, and we do want to play World of Cars, we didn't come in to play World of Cars today.
I feel like Dylan and I are like playing one kind of game, and then like you two are like maybe playing a different kind of game.
What's the grumpiest car?
I legitimately shut up.
It's gonna be an Oldsmobile, right?
Honestly, our characters would work reasonably well together, you and me, Amelia, because I built a cleric that also took like the battle master feat, so you can like. I built someone who could rush in and tank a fight and do healing from the middle of combat.
Yeah.
But then also you have the holy angle and the grounded to like meat space baker element. And then you have a sorcerer who is at their core evil. Like there's a lot of places where that overlaps and you can tell a story that invokes both those people. Mm-hmm. And then we have a spy with us. Let's not even talk about the fact that they're a car. Right. We also have James Bond in the party.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How does that story come into this?
Yeah, it doesn't mix, right?
Right.
It is interesting. Like, and this is kind of a fault of D&D itself, I believe, is when you create, and this has almost been kind of historically the way it's been done, is create your characters, we'll get together as a group, and then we'll figure out how it works together. Or we'll throw our characters at the DM, and the DM will figure it out. It doesn't matter.
Have fun.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
See you later, sucker.
And then nobody in the group knows what any other character is in the group, and we have to pretend to be best friends when we start it up.
And we meet in a tavern, and we all get along fine, to which I say, again, as a woman, I am not leaving a tavern with some weirdo with a sword.
Yep.
Like, I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
And I don't know why every D&D game expects...
Unless the weirdo with a sword is a hot lady.
Okay, well, maybe.
That's right.
You got me. All right, fine.
But no, this is... Aram and I actually were talking about this. We had another recording yesterday, and this came up. But these characters were not characters we built together. Mm-hmm. We built these characters sitting next to each other.
Yes.
Right, which is totally different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We could have, like... in any situation where we intended to play the game, like I rolled my eyes because character creation cast, you're making a goofy choice. But at a table, Ryan goes, "Oh, I'm going to play a vroom vroom," and I go, "No, you're not."
No,
right?
Like, can we at least ground it a little bit more? Because how are we going to build any story that incorporates the sapient car, please?
Yeah. And the thing is, like in almost any other series that we have made, we have had those kinds of conversations where somebody says, I'm going to do this. And you say, oh, I was actually thinking this direction. And we kind of work together on it. And like this one, we very purposefully were like, nope, free for all. And it turned out bad. Dear listeners, this is why you don't do this. It turned out real bad.
Yeah. It was fun.
It was
but
unplayable.
It's not playable. Correct.
In fact, I think the next question is unanswerable.
Dylan, you underestimate us.
Sorry, let me reword that. I don't think there's a good answer to the next question.
For sure, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Anytime I say can't be done, I have a baseline assumption of competency to the result. You know?
Well, can and should are not the same, Dylan. Let me remind you.
Hey, don't knock my character's really bad attribute rolls.
Oh God, I forgot that you don't even exist as like a competent spy car.
No.
Yeah,
that's the bright side to this. Is we're gonna run
the car with the check engine light on.
Say we did this recording, we built these characters, and I was running this game, I would be completely comfortable with it because at the end of session 2, that car is definitely dead. And I'm just not asking you to make a new character.
Right? You have not been invited back.
Level 4 and 11 hit points. There's like one fireball. It's like literally dead. That's it.
Gosh.
Yep. Yeah. Right.
Let's do this. Next question, everyone. How does this story play out? Let's do our fanfic. What? Please tell me about this group. How do we come together?
I'm very thankful that my character is not the elephant in the room.
How are you worse than him?
Oh, you know what?
He is worse because he's like nice, and you like Aram doesn't even try to be likable.
Ryan.
And like Ryan is likable. Like you want to like you want to like him. You know. And then there's Aram that's just like,
so Dylan is so flummoxed because I don't try, and yet all of the guests, even his like childhood friend, like all turn on him.
Sided with you.
Yeah. I make no effort.
Oh, amazing.
That's what makes it worse, though, is that like you don't even try.
It's like if I was limboing, just like walking under like a 6-foot bar, just stride right through.
Yeah. Anyway, so the way we make this work is the question becomes, hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
One second. My guess for how we make this work is we pick who isn't present.
Because who didn't show up this week?
Because if I'm not there, the game starts to make a little bit more sense in a given direction, right? You now have the musician, the weird computer lady, and like we've gone full weird. It's cool. We omit Amelia. We get a new kind of weird that can get a little bit more tethered to reality because the baker and the musician in their weird mystical van.
Yeah.
Still weird, but like a more grounded weird, and you can tell sort of more episodic stories like that. I legitimately think if we take Aram out, I'm still too far out for the whole system to work between the three of us.
No.
Like you take out the vroom vroom, and like I said, the playoff between Amelia's character and mine can clearly work because you've got a very direct holy versus corrupted, and then we've got sort of the neutral dude who is just kind of keeping the party operating.
Yeah, we are just all playing very different games because like that's the thing is like I don't look at my character as being that out there. Like the digigod part is weird.
Yeah.
But it's not weird. You know what I mean? It's like it's a construct, but like you could have it be magic instead of computer. You know what I mean? Like it's not
refluff.
Here's how we do this. Okay, hang on, I got this.
Okay.
I've got this.
Terrified.
So,
boy.
A magical portal opens, and blasting through it comes this car, this strange, exotic machine that's never been seen before. Here comes skidding to a stop, almost crashes over a cliff. The door flings open, and a curly-haired, handsome man comes stumbling out with a fatal wound and dies there on the ground. The magic that has infested this car as it went through the portal splits its intelligent personality from its body. There's still a mind left in there, but there's also this other mind that is now its separate thing. This broken, confused, scared, now two beings comes across the campsite of a simple chef who somehow sees beyond the differences, is able to provide a little bit of safety and a little bit of space. But while the digital creature has a voice, this car doesn't. And while they're able to find safety and security as this new family, the car can't speak. And for many days, there's a little bit of sadness in this new group until one day, an elephant comes along with a horn of their own and teaches our car how to speak in a new way.
Okay, so that's terrible. And here's why.
It just like blows right past any sentiment. Like, let me tell you why you suck.
So what you did there is you told a story that involves all four of the characters. D&D. That wasn't a D&D game. You assumed immediately just an unexplained existence. You linked Amelia and Ryan's characters right off the bat. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Then you bring me in, and you've created a party that could then do some kind of weird adventures, but you have no real explanation for what we would do that is a D&D game in that. And then after you skipped over the D&D game that would happen with the incomplete party, you use your character to do another story that isn't a D&D game that completely resolves all of it. At which point, the entire party is together, the story is over, and a D&D game still hasn't occurred or even started.
Introduced how the characters come together. This is our we meet in a tavern, but it's better because it's an actual story that ties us together emotionally, and now a D&D game can begin. Have we had to do a lot of groundwork?
What are we doing?
So
what is this group competent enough to do together? And why are we still here? Why do I, as a computer, care about any of you?
A family can do anything, Amelia. That's the answer.
See, this is what I mean. You're just washing over the actual game that you're trying to get to, and it works
we can't even fit in the dungeons, Aram.
It works for the nonsense story, right? If you accept that this is absurd, we're bringing unrelated, just unintegrable party members together, and we're just going to play a D&D game now. Yeah, completely fine. But at that point, we've shown up to a beer and pretzels game with our own character sheets, having not spoken, and we just sit down to do the dungeon.
Let me lay something down for you, and I can turn this from a wacky D&D experience into something completely serious. And
no, you can't.
Okay,
I don't believe you, but I'm willing to hear you out more than I was Aram.
How is an organic sentient car to a group of normal people in a fantasy world that different than a beholder? First of all, okay, they're both weird and totally alien. This sentient car, comes from the realm of Motorheim, according to the book, right? And comes through a portal. Portals exist, different dimensions exist in the D&D world. Okay, so now you've got this vroom vroom, this sentient car, who they wouldn't even think of it as a car. They would think of it as what a strange,
you're right. We should murder it.
A
creature,
beholder. Yes.
It's sort of like a weird sort of
look at this
magical creature,
really ugly beholder
that can hold people inside of it to travel.
That's what the holder part stands for.
Exactly.
Oh.
So you've got this multi-dimensional story arc kind of coming through here, right? You've got that potential for choo-choos to come into play and be a frightening monstrosity.
I'm just stuck on why did we not just straight up murder you? If it's a D&D game,
hold on,
and I am a D&D player, I'm going to hit it with my sword.
That's if the DM introduces it, right? Because we are talking about another player showing up at the party and describing this.
I guess.
And what you're sort of talking about is the case of this is what my character would do, which is a bad way to play, right? Let's make some allowances for our fellow party.
Here's what my person would do. I would also murder Ryan.
What she's saying is that if there was a mutant beholder showing up, you're probably going to attack it. You might not ask questions first, is what they're saying.
That's not what my character would do. That is what Amelia would do. If there was a mutant car, I would murder it.
Yes, if I was in Carrie, I would try to sit. Not Carrie. Which one's the car one? Christine.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, it was the other one where a lady's name was a stand-in for Ultimate Evil for Stephen King.
Right. But I mean, say beholders weren't a thing in the D&D world, and a sentient beholder pops into existence and is like, hey, I don't want to do harm to all of you. I just want to exist and do my thing and maybe get back to my homeworld. That's an interesting
it is
story arc.
I agree with you. We're on the same page so far.
Yeah.
Amelia is Satan's Mac.
Effectively. Yes.
So that's sort of where that whole weird and orthogonal directions element comes in, is you're right. Any given weird thing in this campaign could work. It's making all the weird things in this campaign together.
So now Aram's character and Dylan's character, both your characters are the quote unquote normal to a D&D existence type characters. So then now we have to explain Amelia's character as if the world can hold that sort of construct, right?
Yeah.
So yes, magic and potentially computer systems might work. I mentioned medieval neon aesthetic for the setting, which I still think would be amazing to play.
It could be. Can you imagine all the neon lights underneath armor? Come on, it would be friggin' amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No,
everything's about it.
Exactly.
I think like the aesthetic works certainly, but like I said, there's a certain point where you're building a lot on top of a lot of other stuff. And that's my root concern.
I think it's
if
a
you're
lot
going to
to
try
put on.
to build with real coherence, it's going to stress a lot. And trying to make sure that the world makes sense detracts a lot from being able to just tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
Make magic.
I think it's also a lot to like as a player to try and grasp, because I think even if you had the kind of DM that could come up with a game in all of this, that like you as a player trying to absorb the world that the DM creates with this is like a lot of back lore and stuff to really understand and grasp. And because and
we could also like, we could tone your thing down by losing the digi part of it. Right. And if we just characterize your existence as like, if Find Familiar broke away from the wizard,
right,
which is a kind of interesting character, I think. But again, that means that we have to impose on your character, right?
Right. That means I've come with a concept and you've said, no, we can't do that.
Oh, hold on. We need to adjust.
What if we just make magic electricity? What if we literally give electricity the property of magic? Then everything works in this world.
Sure. Again, we're now pushing into territory where like, why isn't this Shadowrun?
It's just 13th century Shadowrun is what we're making. Yeah.
By the time you can make it work, the question becomes, why are you playing D&D?
Why are you playing D&D?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and honestly, that's what the supplements are for, right? To completely take the framework of what D&D is and to play a slightly, if not completely different
direction.
No, the thing is, I think the purpose of a lot of supplements is I don't want to play D&D, but I don't want to learn new rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. 100% valid way of going about it. Honestly, I love the creativity. 220-ish new species of characters that you can play as. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are wacky. A lot of them are wild. A lot of them could easily fit into traditional D&D world, whatever. But like, that's a lot of amazing creativity, and they're bringing that to the 5e system, which is really cool.
I think there's a ton of it. Like, and I certainly don't want to write that off, and I don't want people to come out of listening to these episodes thinking that like the creativity that people are putting into these games is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there was a supplement last year that was Neverland that it had whole new character classes and all like this different hex grid and all kinds of it was just really gorgeous. And there's lots of cool stuff being done. And I absolutely understand that there is a cognitive load involved in learning a new game. There is a financial aspect in picking up a new game and having to buy new books. And I know people say like, well, if you're buying the supplements already, why don't you just buy the new game? Like, whatever. I get that. But there is a lot of effort has to be put into learning a new game, finding somebody to run a new game, making sure everybody in your group wants to play a new game. So there's definitely something to be said for picking up supplements and saying, I want to play D&D, but I want to play in space. Cool. There is an option to do that. Like I want to play D&D, but I want to play in Narnia. Go for it. Live your dream. There are also times where, as we have shown here, D&D might not be the game that we're trying to play.
Yep.
With what we've built.
Yeah.
And that is also valid.
I think it's part of why like we've seen a little bit like from some of the conversations in the Discord for the channel, like some of the things that I've said haven't necessarily landed because we are coming from a place where honestly at this point I know too much about RPGs. Right. So I can recognize places where like, oh, I think this is better served by this. And I can just pivot because I do know that system.
Because there's definitely a language around it, right? Yeah. That like I have learned the shorthand of a lot of things in RPGs that I can just pivot and say like, okay, I can go over here and I know how this applies. It doesn't feel like learning a whole new thing to me anymore because I have all of this shorthand. It's like, okay, I know Latin. And so now it's easier for me to learn the other Romance languages, right?
It's a weird analogy to the whole, like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
But you have to also, like, extend the analogy a little bit to just be, like, there are things that are better to do with an axe instead of a saw. Saws are precision tools. Axe just does a splitting job. But if you only have an axe and you need a saw, well, I mean, guess we have to make it work.
You're
going to
make it work, right?
Like, we're just going to use the tool we have.
And there
that's
are
fine.
definitely
There's nothing
like
wrong with that. If you're running D&D because you don't have the time or the money and the investment to like build up that knowledge,
or because that's what your group is cool with. Like there's like my brother is one of those people that like I have played with him before. Like I know he knows how to play other games.
He just wants to
keeps
play
playing
D&D.
D&D because that's what his friends want to play.
That's cool.
And it's like, cool, live it up. If that's what's fun for you and you want to try out different things or play it different ways, or again, there was a game that came out last year. It was the spy game that was like a spy version of D&D. But gear was done as magical items. Like it was a really cool mechanic. And it's like, there are ways to change it up and like do cool things.
If I were going to do that, I would have
just
done it with spell slots instead, but I get where you're coming from. It's a fair way to build it.
But there are ways to reskin it that are, like interesting and new still. That aren't just like, oh, I changed the name of it and, added +2 and whatever. Yeah.
These aren't the OGL glut of just another 1,000 feats that are +1 to your acrobatics check.
Yeah. There are definitely cool things happening out there, and like people are making new stuff in new ways. So there's definitely still things to be seen. I think, as we've proven, it's in how you use it.
Yeah.
It's not
how
that
much
you
of
use it.
You use all at once.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right.
And who you let use it. Maybe.
Right. And you also have to be careful because like from picking the vroom vroom, like aside from the whole thematics of, playing a sentient car, like mechanically, I'm looking at this and I'm like, this doesn't make sense mechanically. Like, why am I missing out on this attribute? Why do I have to miss out on the second attribute boost? Why do I have to miss out on that? Why is it only 40 feet per second or per round?
Right, when you should be able to drive and go faster.
Yeah, why can I only go that fast?
It's like, but you're a car.
I know. And why can I only hold one person inside my
It's
chassis?
sacrificing too much for balance.
Okay, but to be fair, we have no real scope of how fast people move because 30 feet in 6 seconds is nothing. Like, I can run faster than that, and I am wildly out of shape, and I never did cardio, really, even when I was in shape, which is a bad thing. If you're going to try to get in shape, make sure you kind of take care of your entire body.
Okay, I went to the gym like 3 times a week, and cardio sucks. I would rather...
the worst part.
I will do leg day every day.
Cardio's always been my favorite. To not have to run anywhere. I can zone. But it's not, but for the first 10 minutes,
I get bored.
Sucks.
I think that's the problem. I get bored.
I want the numbers to go up.
I can't like run for more than like a couple, because I'm like, this is boring.
Yeah.
This is
Dylan
so
can't
boring.
use his farm strength on the treadmill. I get it.
No. But yeah, no, that's in the defense of the speed of the vroom vroom, like none of the speeds in D&D actually make any sense, and they're all specifically in the context of you moving that fast during combat while trying to avoid getting hit. So like, all right, we'll let that slide. But I don't know, Ryan, you came the closest to selling.
But trying to balance a car is a really good point, though. Like we're trying to, like when you add the speed in there, and you're like, okay, but the car needs to also go, like not so much faster than the elf.
Or you could just care less about balance. And I encourage everyone who plays D&D to care less about balance, as long as everyone's having fun.
We used to ask a question about that early on in our list. We had a question about like, how do these different classes balance against each other? And almost every designer we had on was like, well, they're not supposed to balance.
Who cares?
Like they're not, like, why do you care about that? So like we took that question out because it was like after we got past D&D, everybody was like, it doesn't, like it's not supposed to.
The only time you can actually balance classes is when all classes are supposed to accomplish the same goal.
Yeah.
If all your classes are trying to do the same thing, you can measure how effectively each one does it. But when, even in D&D, the rogue having expertise at high levels is wildly unbalanced if you're making a skill check.
Yeah.
Because there's no way anyone can ever beat, like, say you got +5 from your charisma and you've got proficiency in deception and you double that because you have expertise. Okay, so now we're at a +17 to my roll. Literally no class can ever tell that the rogue is lying at their highest roll.
Yeah.
Even if they roll their highest roll. Unbalanced.
That's not balanced. No.
But the rogue can only have a damage output if it meets all of these conditions in combat, whereas the wizard can be standing across the room and light everyone on fire.
Right, like they can sneeze and then everything's done.
Yeah, so like balance is only meaningful when you can compare apples to apples.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I think the closest to making the story make sense was what you gave us, Ryan, but that is, again, forcing the entire party to forget what cars are, at which point, what was the point of you playing a sapient car again?
Right. Why did you bother picking that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We're sitting there trying to
that's
make sense of it because you're like, oh, that's not a thing that a car can do. Well, yeah, but also he's not really playing a car. And I don't know.
Yeah. It's just a weird creature, right?
Yeah. Once it's a weird creature, I mean, just play a centaur. It made more sense and it takes up the same space. Come on.
It's true. They're both large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally we talk about our advancement stuff now.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
But A, we've been at this for 2 hours already.
Yep. And
it's already really long. And B, I just don't really feel like there's anywhere to go.
No, there isn't a story at which point, like, all of it, we're in D&D. If you weren't going to multi-class, then where you would go is more levels in your class.
Right.
Yeah. We already took it up a level by going 4 levels in.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that we all picked like weird extra backgrounds. So like, it's just not, you just follow whatever it says to do, which would not be specific to story, which always bothers me. Like your leveling would have nothing to do with what's going on in the story, because what's going on in this story would have almost nothing to do with each of our individual classes here. Even
for the bulk of it, like Ryan, I know you took a subclass out of a book. I'm pretty sure you did as well, Amelia. But like most of your abilities are still going to be the rogue abilities out of the PHB, the sorcerer abilities out of the PHB, and every once in a while you'll get the bump out of the weird book subclass.
Yeah.
Like it's already in stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your background doesn't matter.
Nope.
Your background
for
doesn't
leveling
matter.
up. Your species does not matter for leveling up at all. It's
so for me, like for leveling up, the only thing that would matter would be the one unfun thing that I picked from the PHB.
Yes.
Would be like the one
what's
regular
your class
boring
and subclass, and that's what it boils down to. Like you get some hit points and some new abilities, maybe.
It's so unsatisfying.
And if you gain a +1 in an attribute, there's a 50-50 chance it will do nothing.
It's part of why I hate odd numbers and ability scores, because at that point, the only thing left to do is you go into the feats and you find one that gives you a +1 just to round it out so you get the bonus. And then you can go back to waiting until every 4th level when you get an interesting choice and you actually get to go through the feats and find something fun to do.
Yep.
At which point, just give me a book where it's all just
D&D has so many dead levels. They're so boring. It's so boring.
I wouldn't even necessarily say they're dead levels. They're just locked in levels. It's just you're being told you are going to get this at this point and you can't have it yet. There isn't a choice that you're getting to make. There isn't a way in which leveling up reflects the story, like you said, unless every now and then you're carefully selecting a multi-class option. And even then, that can really screw with things.
There's 2 points when you pick your class and when you pick your subclass. Those are your choices. Everything outside of that is you're down this line, except for maybe when you pick some spells.
Do it a step worse, because they tied the feats and the ability score increases to your class. So if you get halfway through and you're like, I'm kind of bored, I think it'd be interesting if I dipped into Warlock. Well, now because you made that choice, it's going to be another 4 levels before you get to make another choice, because you've now put off that ASI or the feat, as the case may be. It just, I don't know. It locks you in a way that I don't find fun.
Right.
If you're not going to give me anything new to choose between points A and B, if I'm just going to be walking down the line you prescribed for me, why is this not just a single level?
Right. Why isn't it clearer like in other games? Why, if you're going to be railroad me. If you're going to put me on a path, make that path very clear. Mark it.
Yeah, don't pretend to not do that. I think that's what bothers me.
Why
is that,
does
like,
everybody start playing D&D at level 3?
Mm-hmm.
You start off at the first interesting choice you get to make, and the next level you get to make another interesting choice, and then the next level you don't make a choice, but you do get something cool as a result of your previous choice. And then 6 and 7 are waiting for those abilities to kick in and hoping that they're interesting. And then in 8 you get to make another choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, just make this a 5-level game. You start at level 3, and then you get level 5, and then you get level 8, and then you get level.
Yeah,
it'll feel
exactly.
more like you actually get to make decisions, and it matters.
It's really interesting that a game that feels like the whole point of playing in if you just look at the mechanics is to advance and progress your character.
The progression is so unsatisfying.
Right. That is very unsatisfying, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
why are we all still playing this game?
It does. It like if you're a wizard and you hit that level 5 and you finally get Fireball, and I was like, yes, I've got Fireball. I feel powerful. This is amazing. But
and now I can wait until level 11 because the level 4 spells are pretty much all garbage.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like this progression game that is just like progression feels like how they treat
slog.
backgrounds. It feels like, and you get backgrounds. Oh, and you progress eventually.
Oh, you gain a level. Good for you.
Yeah, by the way, roll your dice, get some hit points. Here's some toys for you to play with. Have fun killing more monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? But that's only like a small part of what RPGs can do. And so now you're in this whole like, well, if I'm playing D&D, I'm generally playing combat because that's what the game is for.
That's a fun note to leave off.
There you go.
Yeah,
we do enjoy D&D for the record.
We do.
Yeah.
That's why we do this.
I always feel bad, like when we talk about it on the show, I feel like we always are like, well, D&D. But I think my thing is always like, there is a time and a place for it. And my frustration is always this like square peg, round hole.
Yeah.
Like not everything is meant to be a D&D, and D&D won't do everything. And for the things that you want it to do, it can do them really well. Yeah. It's not all the things.
And Dylan has mentioned this before with our show. Our show, Kill Every Monster, is not a D&D celebration show. There are many, many, many D&D celebration shows. Ours is a D&D criticism show. Doesn't mean we don't love it. Mm-hmm. We love the show. But a lot of our show is about looking at D&D with a critical eye and reevaluating and asking questions instead of just accepting it for what it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of people who are confused because like they're going like, and reasonably so. They come into the show expecting a lecture, an explanation of like how to use the monster appropriately in the game. And then we come in and are like, and here's why the game is wrong.
Right.
Like our base starting point is not education on D&D. It's education to D&D because D&D is incorrect.
But I also think that like conversations like that, and I've said this about myself with, other things that I talk about too, is like that it has to come from a place of love. That like you only know so much about a thing. Like you only know to dig that deep and to look for all those flaws when you've spent so much time looking at it.
D&D.
If you're not like D&D, I would just say D&D is a bad game that I don't want to play. I would leave.
Right. And it like comes from a place of love because it's like, look, I love you so much. I want you to be better. Like I want you to be good.
This is how much I've thought about you. This is how concerned I am about you. I've put this much effort into it.
I am still here because I think that we can work through this together.
We can make this work. Please.
Right? Please. Like, I'm here because I love
D&D,
you.
I'm willing to give you another chance.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
but you only know that much about a game because you've looked at it so much, because you've spent so much time on it to be able to see. There's a point where it's like, okay, I like this thing. It's cool. I've looked at it. And then you start to see all those niggly little bits that don't work anymore, that you're like, oh, I've stared at it so long that I can,
we've been in this D&D marriage for a long time.
Right, exactly. I still love you, but...
and this is where people are free to disagree with us entirely. Like we don't have to be on the same page for this one. But then it's just not becoming CinemaSins.
Right.
You can see all the little niggly bits, all the bits that don't work, and then it's just make sure your criticism mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh no, it was night when he entered the tunnel and it was day when he came out of the tunnel. Like that's a continuity error. But like, okay, so if it was still night, would that actually change?
Right. Would that matter to the story?
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the goal, is just hopefully the criticisms we're giving people are useful to them in their home game and feel warranted, as opposed to just walking in going, it's goofy that the wizard can't cast this spell at this level yet.
Oh, that's annoying. No, I think it's worth looking at. And one thing that I like about Kill Every Monster too is like, okay, this is bad.
Please tell me what I'm good at.
Here's what would make it better. Here's what would, like what would be fun is if we tried this instead.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it do this thing, or if it had this ability or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is, what I hope people get out of this too, is that like, you can play with all of these supplements. You can just, here's how to direct it. Here's how to make that actually work.
The difference is if you're going to tear it down, you got to build up. If you're going to rip something down to the foundation, you better leave something afterwards, because people care about this. You don't want to just beat it up for no reason. I mean, if you have a reason, then you should showcase what it is to do the other thing. Otherwise, you're just, again, just throwing bricks at windows.
Right. Propose a solution.
Don't be a jerk. Yeah, exactly. Propose a solution.
Absolutely. Yes. And play D&D. Yeah. And you know what? If having a vroom vroom and an orc baker in your game sounds like fun to you, go for it. It does not sound fun to me. I do not understand how to do it. If you can,
go with God.
Live your dream. Live your dream. Go with your many separate gods that each of your characters worships. That's fine.
Well, this has been a ton of fun. I have thoroughly enjoyed both creating characters with both of you and discussing D&D and revisiting D&D after 4 years of doing it. It's wild. It's such a fun experiment that we did here. Yeah,
this was a weird. I'm glad it worked out / didn't work out, but it was a fun little thought exercise. Honestly,
100%.
I enjoyed our failure.
Yeah. And that's what matters, right? We had fun.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Who cares if our listeners liked any of it? Right. We had fun.
Yeah. Exactly. And listeners, if this turned out to be a slog that only we enjoyed, you can always try Kill Every Monster, which is always a fun podcast. Every episode is very good.
Absolutely. Well, in every episode, the guests are amazing.
/Kill Every Monster.
Yeah, and like in every single episode of Kill Every Monster, the guests are great. The guests are always amazing.
They don't have any crappy guests on their show.
Yeah, we don't make mistakes like these two having us on the show.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, Dylan, Aram, thank you both so much for joining us to talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Seriously, thank you for having us on. This was fantastic. I had a great time.
It was a great time.
Can you remind everyone where they can find you online and what sort of things you're working on?
Yeah, I am basically doing my PhD and Kill Every Monster. And you can't see any of my PhD stuff yet because it's not done. So check out Kill Every Monster instead.
There you go.
And you can find me on Twitter at DJ Malenfant. For the record, not a DJ. Middle name is Jacob. And you can find the podcast at wherever you find podcasts, Kill Every Monster, or on Twitter at KEM Podcasts. Also on TikTok now.
Also on TikTok.
Yes, also on TikTok. You can find me at Aram Vartian. You can find everything about Kill Every Monster at killeverymonster.com or again on Twitter at KEM Podcasts.
Well, thank you both for sitting down with us. This was such a good time. Thank you to everyone for suffering through this with us. We will be back actually next week, I think, with our Q&A, right, Ryan?
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, a surprise extra episode this month.
If not two.
If not two. We'll see how much we talk. Who knows?
We'll see. Call to action.
Yeah, like that. This was a really good discussion.
I
loved the conversation that we got to have. I loved being able to really kind of dig into that, like, that sort of back and forth between, like, I really like D&D, but... And the number of times that in these, in these series, I've kind of hated on D&D, admittedly. But to be able to kind of dig in and say, like, no, I think it is good for some stuff. It just, a place for everything and everything in its place, as my mom says. So I really think that we got to hit on some of that stuff and some of those nuances and subtleties that we don't always get to talk about in other episodes. And it felt really nice to be able to do that finally.
Yeah. And I enjoyed being the instigator for once.
Yeah. I do feel a little bit bad. I walked away after our recording and I was like, was I too mean? Because I was like, this is your fault, Ryan. You ruined it.
I ruined it on purpose, admittedly. So
yeah, but you did. So, I was like, was I too mean? No, I was right.
You were right. Because I did ruin it on purpose because that was the whole point of the exercise to
like, can all of this work?
Yeah.
Should all of it work? Yeah.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Dylan is to say, and Dylan says no.
I know. I agree. The level-headed one in the room.
I mean, I like after all of this is over, I can safely say, like, yeah, I'm with Dylan on this one.
Yeah, I know.
It was not good.
But before we let you go for the week, we do just have a few calls to action.
If you are listening today, Monday, May 16th, and there's still some time left in the day, it is Miracle Monday, where Jeff Stormer is hosting a superhero-themed stream up on the One Shot Network Twitch. It will be tons of great content, all for a great cause to support Trans Lifeline. We have an AP on there today, depending on when you're listening to this. I don't know if it already happened or not. I don't know what time.
Yep.
But you can find all of that over on twitch.tv/OneShotRPG. So please pop in and see what's going on over there.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have some new merch available on the One Shot TeePublic store. If you love Sims 4 esports as much as we do, you'll want to check that out. 4 out of 5 doctors Millipede agree. Sims 4 esports is amazing.
We have one more review to read. It is the last one in our pile, so please consider leaving one over on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or a rating on Spotify. Did I get all of them?
And Facebook.
Oh, Facebook, yeah. Okay. But now I'm going to read one that we got from Frithkin on Podcast Addict. A fantastic podcast giving overviews of RPG systems through character creation. I would have been happy to give 10 stars out of 5 if I could. It's that good. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
that is like a We Rate Dogs level of like 12 out of 10. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that review. Well, that's it for our calls to action. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. We know the series was a lot of long episodes, and I promise not to overload you with outtakes this one time.
Because they weren't appropriate. They were not Ryan approved outtakes.
There's so many. I would have to be spamming the language button.
Yeah, you would like not actually hear any of the outtakes.
No.
You'd just be going like,
Pretty much. So maybe that content will find its way somewhere in the grand scheme of the universe. But, until we find a home for it.
It's not here and it's not now.
Exactly. But, stay tuned next week for the start of our special bonus Q&A, I guess, series at this point.
Yeah, it's going to have to be. You submitted too many questions, dear listeners, and now it's got to be several episodes. And you were going to have a week off from us, but now you don't get one.
Yep.
You did it to yourselves.
You did it to yourselves. But you also did it to us, and we appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
So until then, have a good rest of your week. Stay safe. Drink some water. Loosen those shoulders. Probably still wear a mask. Vaccinate. And keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to leave us a rating or review, we have links to various review platforms out there, including Apple Podcasts, in our show notes. Also, check the show notes for links to our other projects. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We will see you next time.
Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs. Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you'll find other great shows like Asians Represent.
Asians Represent celebrates Asian creators and diversity in the gaming community. Join hosts Agatha Chang and Daniel Kwan as they discuss gaming, genre, and representation with their guests, and occasionally argue with each other to the sound of Agatha's beloved air horn app.
I did it.
There we go. It's running.
It's great. It's beautiful.
Do we want to do like a secondary count just to make sure you can line these up? Or
No.
you feel like you're going to be good?
It'll be fine.
Cool.
Close enough.
Every time we do like a clap or whatever, it just goes awry.
Because I go like this.
Yep. Or I hit my mic or
Oh yeah, I've done that a lot too.
okay, I gotta turn down my gain a little bit though, because I'm still getting used to the room. Right.
Sure.
It's brand new.
Sure.
It's like 3 weeks old or so.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying things like, "Oh, you can tell the difference. Like it sounds terrible." And I'm like, I can't.
No, I do it to Dylan all the time.
He's lying.
I'm like,
Yeah.
Dylan, listen, I have completely remastered this entire episode. Listen to it. You can hear the difference. And Dylan has just come to the point where he's like, oh, yeah, I can.
That's great.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds so good.
You're
I'm so glad
You
you
do
did
the
that.
same
You're
thing
an editor.
I do when my child talks to me. He's like, "Mom, look at this really cool thing." Yeah, honey, it's
That's
great.
the
It's
best.
great. Look at that.
So
Wow.
cool.
Wow.
Awesome.
You are
Great work.
so talented.
So proud
young
of you.
man.
You're
Uh-huh.
also very tall.
That's how Dylan treats me. Yeah. And I'm like, thank you. Go away happy. Yeah.
Thank you for your
Legitimately,
praise.
he told me that he had completely fixed some of my audio, sent me a new file, and then I double checked the file names.
Yeah, to make sure it wasn't the same file. But it was fixed.
See, I like you're at the level of friendship though that I have with other people too, where it's like, look, what do you need today? Can you just like say nice things about me for a little bit? Like that's
all
what
I
I
need.
really need. Just like
Dylan
tell me how
says-
great I am.
I always know how needy Dylan thinks I am because I'll just get some cat pictures. I'm like, okay, thank you. It's like, look at these, go away.
I am busy. Here is the cat. Please stop talking to me.
I have a paper to write. Can you just go like
Yeah, I'm in the middle of
Go
something,
play.
so
Yeah. I accept it.
look, I think it's important to just know what the dynamic is and then it's fine.
just yeah.
Dylan, Jude says hi because he's messaging me right now. He's like, I'm doing this. And I was like, I'm in the middle of something. And he's like, hi, Dylan.
But only
Don't
for
interrupt
only for
things.
Dylan.
Listen, hey,
You're interrupting.
tell him I said, hey, Jude, but don't make it bad. We're in the middle of a podcast.
Dylan, you don't even have children. How was that joke that bad?
Oh, I
don't
thoroughly
care.
enjoyed it. All right. So half these outtakes I can't use.
Yes,
It's fine.
Agreed. Sorry. delete. We're just trying to get all out before your PG-13
Yeah.
filter hits us. That's all.
They just want us to know what we're in for.
Yeah.
It's true.
Which is why Ryan will be playing the extremely not racist race of car.
No, it's very
Spoilers,
racist.
I'm sorry.
Cars are
Spoiler,
very
there's too
racist.
many opportunities for bad puns.
What?
Spoiler.
Speaking of supplements,
Spoiler is one of the race options for Blurbs.
Yes. Yes. What
Spoiler
is
is
it?
just a subclass of the racist
It is.
car.
Let's go to the
Great.
blooper reel.
Guys, this is fun.
that's definitely outtakes. All right.
Yeah. That and then my follow-up question of if I go on a date with you, will you murder me?
That's
Which
how
they
we
always
know.
say, why would you ask that? And I say, why wouldn't I?
Exactly.
Like worst case scenario, you say no and you think it's a weird question and we just move on. Best case scenario, you say yes and I leave.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I think honestly the best case scenario was this one person that said, no, are you going to murder me?
There you go.
And I was like, asking the right questions. No.
Yeah.
I believe I said,
This
I
date's
haven't
getting off
decided
to a
yet.
good start.
But
Are you going to murder me? Depends.
I said, well, I haven't met you yet. We'll see how it goes.
I would like the one who was like just didn't expect the question. Well, yes, exactly. Honestly, I was thinking about it.
I was, yeah, but
So
like
funny
now,
you brought it
now
up.
that you asked, it feels weird.
Now I can because you're expecting it.
Yeah, it's kind of
Right.
on the table now.
Oh,
You want to knock out this
quickly
last?
before we actually start making characters,
Yes.
maybe at some point.
Yes.
I forgot that you did it wrong last time.
It threw you off.
I totally,
Honestly, it threw me off too.
it wasn't right.
It wasn't. It
You
felt.
can't do
it felt-
something one way for 4 years and then like no warning, just
I was very
willy nilly.
I was in a very silly mood.
I feel like that's not unusual. You know, I feel like we come into this and we're either like super slap happy or we're both like way too tired. It's
It's not unusual to click that record button.
I see. I had it in my head too. Why is that in my head?
Because it's not unusual.
Unusual to check your levels. Yeah, just like that. There's just like some real sweet bass happening outside, like rattling my windows. Okay,
All about the bass.
all about that bass.
We did it.
We did it.
31 minutes for 5 minutes of content stopping. Okay, so I didn't get any extra good actual where's my character sheet? I've got too many things open.
Yeah.
Time to close all the stuff I'm not using.
Your character sheet is now just a Kelly's Blue Book page. Be a little nicer to me. I know, even I couldn't say that with a straight face.
I will grant that you picked something somehow you didn't make the most ridiculous character.
No, not even close. Not even remotely. I'm playing an elephant named Johnny Sax who plays his trunk like a saxophone. It's not even close to the silliest thing. Yeah. Pretty happy about that.
Yep.
I do like the car.
I
gotta say.
hate this so much.
I know you do.
This
It's
is
the
the
best.
thing. Is like my only ask out of a D&D game usually is cohesion.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the
And this is purposeful.
this is
purposeful,
antagonism.
As much as possible. Yeah. And then how can we pull it together in the end? I like it. It's fun. Yeah, it works. But it is also everything you hate, which is the best, which also just adds to my joy. I mean, all of this really is about
It's
pleasing
not like
me.
I didn't warn you before. It was like,
But
we're going to do all of this?
You did?
Nope.
You did.
But you
I
underestimated
didn't look
us.
through each of the splat books. So yes, I missed the cryptocurrency and cars book.
Yeah, he always underestimates how much effort I'll put into it to make it hurt for him. He always underestimates that somehow.
I know, but the whole point of this one was for it to be stupid.
That's true. This was dare to be stupid, 100%.
We were not trying to be serious at all. I wouldn't invite Aram on to be serious.
Why would you? It's like I would just sabotage it.
It is important to have me here to sandbag things a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I have no capacity for whimsy.
He has none. He really doesn't.
It's because you're a
early on the
scientist.
show.
It's for the week.
He hates whimsy. No. If this was serious, Dylan would literally have to be recording this with his knee on my neck and just be like, I've got him, just go. He's not near a mic for the next 30 minutes. Go.
Quick while you can.
Lock me in a basement.
Nobody went with the pro wrestling book.
At least something went okay.
My PDF reader.
It froze?
It froze.
Boo.
I scrolled one page too far and it just said, sorry, I'm out.
Womp womp.
All right. My character was saved. I don't know where they're.
Good.
Okay, yeah, so I didn't lose my horrible stats. That would have been a shame to have to
such a
re-roll
shame.
all those.
Yeah, exactly. Come back rolling threes.
Uh-huh.
So here's what we're going to do. Ryan, you get what you can for usable bloopers, and I'm so sorry. And any of the non-usable bloopers, you just pass along to Aram, and we'll throw them up on the on the Kill Every Monster.
We'll do a little bit of cross promotion. Yeah.
All right. I will have an outtakes track and I can't use this track.
Got it.
I'll just
can't
pass
use
that.
this track. Will be 3 hours and 27 minutes long.
I'm glad that they will live on somewhere.
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right. Now we can press stop on those.
Stop.
Oh, I did it.
I did it too. I almost forgot to click it.
That kind of day, huh?
It really has been.
Whew,
It's fine.
I feel you.
All right. We're going to knock this out so fast, we'll have no room for outtakes.
It'll be great.
That'd be great. I've got food coming sometime soon. So,
Yeah, that's fine. I will do the 5 count and we will go.
all right.
Don't laugh at my janky fingers.
No. I am very impressed by your workaround.
It's like, I can't do 3.
You
The
can
thumb doesn't reach the
you
pinky.
can do 3. It's just a different 3.
Still
It's fine.
doesn't, yeah.
Call to which action.
That might be the quickest we've ever done one of those.
And all right. We do have a review, by the way.
Oh, we do?
On Podcast Addict. Yes, we do. I can read it out when we get there.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So we got one.
Okay. Hold on, I'm going to press this on.
Is there a source away? Ooh. Oh, like 13 minutes.
I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't even mess it up.
Specifically.
First
not a
official recording since I fixed my gain issues. I'm very excited.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Otherwise.
It just cracks me up because every time you're like, it's me, Ryan, and you can hear all of the problems with my audio. And I'm like, I can't.
Well, this sounds familiar.
Oh, it was peaking so much though, all the time.
I can't.
But now it's not.
And then he said, I bet, he's like, we'll ask Aram. I bet Aram could hear it. I was like, that is like me saying, I can't tell the difference between a real and a fake diamond, but a jeweler could.
Right, but if you asked De Beers, I bet they could. Well, yeah.
Right. Like, I was like, that's not a good,
That's my baseline.
fair assessment.
I'll hear shit that doesn't exist in the recording, but somehow still did around him. That's
Right.
not fair at all.
Right.
I send Dylan 2 clips all the time. I'm like, listen, Dylan, you can hear it. And he'll be like, okay.
No, you can't.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Hilarious.
Brian is like, can you tell how bad my audio is? Because there's a fan blowing 4 miles down the road at like No, I can't.
I'm pretty sure a dog farted. We have to re-record everything.
Start over.
Just get rid of it.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I put a pillow behind my monitor, so maybe that'll help something. It probably won't, but
It does a little bit.
Recording earlier today, I shut the door to my office and I was like, that sounds more echoey. Open the door. Hopefully that doesn't fuck up anything. Anyway.
Yeah, like those are my only two adjustments. I was like, is the door open? Is the door closed?
It just
I can
means
close the curtains.
More post-processing, and that's fine. Yeah. I mean, it's still listenable.
Yeah, it's fine because I'm not redecorating my house.
It's true.
All right, we can do our 5 count, and then Ryan can laugh at me because I can't actually count with my fingers anymore.
No, I laugh because it's impressive what you do.
At me.
I was like, wow, that's actually really great.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, I will do my 5 count.
You laughed at her during your explanation about how you were laughing at her. I just want to point that out.
I was laughing at myself, just to be on the record about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to count now so that we can record a podcast.
Delete.
Next question.
I've got a cat intrusion.
That's okay.
I have to find something horrible to mail to his kid to.
Look how sweet they're being. That's okay. Hey, buddy.
This is Mr. Peaches.
Oh, Mr. Peaches.
He is 16 years old.
Oh, Mr.
Peaches.
Well, hello, Mr.
He does
Peaches.
intrude every so often. He never makes any noise or anything, though. He's just like there. Like I never hear him even when he comes in.
He never made it through doctor school, so we couldn't call him Dr. Peaches.
Sure, he's not Dr.
Fair.
Peaches, right? Sure.
Didn't get the degree.
MD Peaches. Yeah.
MD.
Bachelor's Peaches.
Dr. Peaches, MD.
How you refer to people. I dropped out of high school. Like, no, it's something.
Anywho.
Yeah.
I know Dylan just hurls that cat.
He just like picks it up. He's like, go over there. That was great. It was just like this one-handed like scoop. Like that was a very practiced motion. Is what I liked about it. It was just like somebody who's done that a lot.
She's lovely. I know she'll land on her feet, but she's purring and she'll get at the microphone. Okay?
Yep.
There's worse sounds to have.
Yeah.
Like, all of our chewing earlier.
Yeah,
that's true.
Annie Riff's table.
Oh, come on now.
Just because Rift is an unplayable game, not because of the people.
You've activated Ryan's trap card.
You've activated my Palladium trap card. Let me show you my cube full of Palladium books down here.
I'm trying to think of like you try to run this game with Rifts, and my brain just broke because I'm like, I don't have
this is every Rift game ever.
We're fine in Rifts.
This is a Rift game. These are probably character classes in Rifts. RCCs, OCCs, what have you. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen.
Yep. I want some Glitter Boy armor where the trunk is my railgun.
Oh, God.
Sure. Done.
Hell yeah.
Honestly, more workable than this party in a D&D game.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Portals open all the time in Rifts. The whole game's based around that. Anything you want could just fall out, and then there it is.
Right. Exactly.
All right. We can hit that stop button right now.
There we go. Hey, yeah. Oh, wait, that wasn't stop.
Oh, that was so exciting. That was 2 clickies in one day.
2 clickies in one day.
It's a double clicky day.
Double clicky day.
Double clicky day.
Yeah. All right. Series 50.3 cold open. Let's get right into that.
Action.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, like that. Okay.
Pause for drama, but also so it's easy to edit. Woo! To recording.